This meeting's being live streamed for the benefit of the public. This is the meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee on the 18th of September 2025. I will start with item 1, which is the minutes of the previous meeting on pages 4 to 15 of your agendas. Can I ask members if you're happy with the minutes? Okay, and all in favour, please show. Right, I shall sign those as a true record. Actions arising from the minutes are none. Julie, do we have any apologies?
Yes, just the one, Chairman. We have an apology from Councillor William Richmond.
Thank you, and I understand that it came in relatively late and our substitute really didn't have a chance to respond. Thank you. I have no urgent business. Are there any declarations of interest? There are none. Non-members wishing to address the meeting are officers and no other members. Thank you. So I have nothing to note on training issues. So we go to item 8, which is the Q2 Strategic Risk Report. Councillor Webb to present.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, committee members. I'm delighted to bring the Q2 Risk Report to Governance and Audit today to provide an overview of the Council's risk landscape. This register was last seen by the committee in June. As you may expect, local government reorganisation and devolution are two areas where we're carefully managing and monitoring our risks. We have taken on board feedback from the last meeting of this committee and as a result has now separated this risk into two specific parts. Members will note the difference in scoring between these two risks, and we hope this now addresses the points raised at the last meeting and now better reflects the Council's position. The second major change members will notice is the removal of the emerging government policy risk. This decision has been taken as a result of the corporate management team's annual risk review, with the decision to remove it due to the amount of policy risks which now sit as individual risks within the register. In recent years, the Council has moved to managing high-risk policies such as nutrient neutrality, devolution, LGR and waste strategy as individual risks rather than as a collective risk. Ultimately, we feel this approach has been beneficial and allows for a more tailored risk management. As a result, CMT, that's the corporate management team, have elected to remove the emerging policy risk and formalise their approach to individual emerging policy risks, becoming their own strategic risks moving forwards. Overall, risk within the register remains relatively unchanged. The Council's position around temporary accommodation and nutrient neutrality risk is that we would like to reduce these risks in the coming months, but have them kept at the current level for now. As previously discussed, temporary accommodation usage continues to move in a positive direction, but is not yet at a level where we would be confident we have achieved a permanent reduction. Equally, the Council's stance is that nutrient neutrality is moving in a direction where it no longer meets the criteria for a standalone strategic risk, but an element of the local plan risk. I will now hand over to Ryan if he wishes to add anything further.
Lovely. So just a couple of bits from me, if that's okay. So firstly is around LGR and devolution. Obviously, you'll note that there isn't a target on that risk at the moment. In light of obviously the decision that we've taken today at Council, that's sort of the next bit of the risk which we'd like to look at. The reason we haven't done it before now is it's obviously very difficult to quantify what a target could be for that risk at the moment. So that's something I hope we can bring forward in the future. The other one, just to comment on, is the emerging policy risk, as we've sort of alluded to in the introduction there. A lot of the government emerging policy we've broken off into standalone risks, and as part of the annual review we do with CMT, it was becoming a case of what goes into the emerging policy risk, what doesn't go into it. Obviously, if you're always taking your high risk items out of that risk, it becomes quite challenging to try and mitigate that and sort of score that effectively. So, like I said, moving forward, we'll be doing it on a policy-by-policy basis. Obviously, we'll have to take feedback on stuff like that. But yes, any questions from the committee, we'll be happy to answer.
Harry, and then David.
Yes, thank you for that, Ryan, and thank you, Alison, also the revised format. Yes, I know some of the risks haven't changed. Some of these are outside your control. Reading this through, particularly around temporary accommodation, so we've got where we're placing people, some as a short-term notice, where we've got to find emergency accommodation, as opposed to where we've got something more planned. One of the things that isn't necessarily under our control is where authorities outside Breckland are making placements, and I hope that the CMT, etc., were looking at that or engaging with other authorities, because if we have people who, obviously it's a free market, as it were, but if we have a number of placements which are taking up available places because they get in first, etc., if we've got anything reserved as a block booking, we may find ourselves having to accommodate people further away, and potentially additional costs, because obviously it's a competitive market. So some of that I know is operational, but it may affect the sort of the risk scores and the cost to us. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll quickly come in on that. I'd say that's obviously something we're aware of. Obviously, with this specific risk, there's the challenge of it being Breckland based, and that's an element which feeds into it. But no, I'll take your comments on board, Councillor.
Rob.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to provide a bit of extra for that, Councillor Clark. Steve James is now meeting with all his equivalent directors from all the local authorities in Norfolk to make sure, in response to your very legitimate concern, that there's better coordination of where people in emergency accommodation are being placed. So we're not all acting independently and inadvertently putting people in the same accommodation. Actually, if we work together as directors, we can take a bit more of a coordinated approach to where they're being put. In terms of picking up Councillor Webb's points, in terms of the positive direction that temporary accommodation is going, I think it's worth reflecting that we've now only got 18 households in nightly paid temporary accommodation. The rest of the group are being housed in accommodation owned or managed on behalf of the authorities. So we're certainly heading in the right direction, although housing still remains a challenge. Thank you, Chairman.
David.
Just want to say thank you for the way that you've addressed the issue of long-term risks that are unlikely to be met in the time period. I think that's quite a neat solution.
Would you like to just add to the reduce risk on waste strategy? You've gone from 20 to 15.
Yes, so I believe that might be an overhang of the previous quarter, because there has been an update around it. So last quarter it would have been 15 as well. I will amend that, but thank you for pointing that out, Chair.
I think I read elsewhere that the vehicles are being procured for that food waste element.
Yes, so that's all happening. I think a lot of the updates around the food waste stuff relate to last quarter, so stuff that we're still progressing as opposed to new updates. So there might be a little bit of confusion in there. So basically, it was a 15 risk score. Last quarter was a 15 risk score. This quarter, there hasn't been loads of movement across the summer in terms of updates from government and stuff like that, but we're sort of on a reduced level compared to where we previously were. But yes, the procurement stuff's captured within that.
Chairman, in answer to your point about the vehicles have been procured. Right. There's a significant lead time, as you might expect, for these vehicles, and they're in high demand across the country from councils delivering similar services. So they'll arrive in June of next year. It's slightly later than the sort of original anticipated delivery date of the sort of 1st of April, 1st of the financial year. Like many authorities, we're being hit by a significant procurement timescale for new vehicles in the waste and recycling fleet. And we will start delivering the domestic food waste from June onwards. The commercial food waste is already under operation and is working very well alongside our general trade waste, which is probably reflective of why the scores over the last few months have started to diminish.
And are they effectively closed body vehicles?
They're, I don't know the technical terms, Chairman. They're smaller vehicles, and essentially the way it works is you have a small caddy that you put the food waste into. As the crew are going along, they empty the small caddy into a normal size 240 litre receptacle, and then that's lifted into the back of the vehicle. But they're significantly smaller in size than the traditional refuse vehicles. Whether that means they're closed or not, I'm not entirely sure.
I was following one along the M25 on Tuesday, which was open-topped and smelly.
Oh, if you mean open topped across the top, no, they're roofed across the top, but you've got open access at the back as you would do on a more standard size refuse vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions on the strategic risk report? There are none, so the committee notes your report and thank you. And now you're going to talk to us about the risk policy.
Okay, I'm pleased to present to you today the revised risk management framework. The framework sets out how the Council manages risk and risk appetite and was last refreshed in 2023. Since the last refresh, the Council's approach to risk management has stayed largely the same. It's important to highlight this is not a case of us standing still, but maintaining a high level of quality risk management within our Council. We have been able to do this, not just through officers, but through this committee as well, which has ensured there is a healthy challenge to decisions around risk. Risk management only works if we move collectively to ensure that we manage risks correctly for our residents. What this policy does seek to change is some of the technical language around risk management. Ryan can answer questions on this in more depth, but this again highlights that we are able to take steps such as this due to the solid foundation we have built around risk management fundamentals. The recommendation is to approve the policy for 2 years, meaning that we'll be reviewing it again in 2027. I will now hand over to Ryan if he wishes to add anything further.
Thank you. So I'll just cover off a couple points around that. So obviously just for the minutes, track changes copy went out separately to the committee as well. That isn't in the agenda pack, but obviously you guys have had access to that. That is the same as the one that's in the agenda pack, obviously just showing where we've made those changes. The changes broadly fall into two categories. One is obviously my role has slightly changed. So we've removed my old team and have now put my new team in there. So that's now about the performance and projects team. The other one is some of the technical language within there. Effectively, what we've done with that is we've tried to align it more closely to something called the Government Orange Book. That's effectively central government's guide for risk management. So we've moved away slightly from a general industry standard text around risk management in some cases, and it's now something that's slightly more tailored to the public sector. I think Councillor Webb's covered a lot of it in there. I think we've not felt the need to make massive changes to this risk policy at this time. I think risk management worked quite well. I think we have quite a good level of challenge from the committee and challenge from CMT around risk management. There's certainly things which we're going to work on over the next couple of years in the interim, which hopefully we can bring forward in future policies around project risk, stuff like that. But at the moment, we're sort of content with where we are. So I'm obviously happy to take any questions the committee's got around the framework.
Harry?
It's not wanting to add any extra workload to the team, but just having read through the strategy, I wonder where appropriate, or perhaps going forward, where you've got the risk appetite matrix and you've got the terminology describing each level of the risk, you know, cautious, etc., a bit like when you're investing money, is whether you might be able to have that sort of descriptor. So whilst you've got the high level 4x4, etc., whether you might possibly either have another column or at a future date, or maybe periodically, if you're going to have an annual review of the risk appetite, you might say, well, you're going to line that so that correlates to that, so you can equate you might say, well, we've got a hungry risk appetite there because that's something where we can afford to have that degree of tolerance there that we couldn't with something else which is more financial implication. Just a bit of sort of lining up. It's just a suggestion rather than instruction.
Yeah.
I think that's a really valid suggestion. At the moment, what we try and do with the appetite stuff is in the latest note within the risk report, we put a brief bit about what it means in the context of that risk. In terms of applying that to a wider risk across the board, so like you say, financial, HR risk, stuff like that, that's certainly something we could look to develop. So I'll make a note of that, that when we bring back the risk appetite review next year, we'll try and include something around that for the specific areas. But yes, take your comments on board.
Mark?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm intrigued by the change from organisation development performance team, which is obviously a team, to it looks like an individual. Is that what's happened, or is that lead part of a team? I mean, does that control the team that used to be?
So I can cover this one pretty easily. So I used to be in the organisational development and performance team. I was the performance bit, and my role in that was the performance and risk lead, which is still my role now. All that's happened is I've now moved over to the projects team with Mark here. So effectively, it's still within my remit. There is obviously some backfilling in terms of Mark has knowledge around risk through his background in project management and stuff like that. But whether it would be right to include the projects team specifically as responsibility for that. So we've gone with the role effectively rather than the team.
Carry on. I have your track changes. Thank you very much for that. That's very useful, rather than having to compare two on a screen. I have found some words missing and some bits and pieces that I think could be amended. Rather than go through them and bore everybody else, what I'll do is I'll give you this marked up copy of your track changes, and you can have a look at them and say whether they're any good or not.
Yeah, happy with that.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds entirely reasonable. So one question I have, this is due for review in 24 months' time, which will be probably when there's still a Breckland and a shadow authority. Whose responsibility will it be to review these arrangements?
I'll be completely honest. We've set this as 2 years because that's what we agreed when we went through the last review. We've therefore set like that again. My assumption, I don't know whether Rob or Sarah would have any sort of knowledge of that, is whoever potentially takes over the responsibility around risk management would obviously have a sort of duty to refresh that policy as of when, under whatever that new organisation looks like. Because ultimately, I'm not 100% whether this one would align to, shall we say, partner organisations, which you may or may not join with. So that's why we stuck with the 2 years.
I mean, I think my understanding is that we're broadly compatible with county risk policy as well, because they're under this overall government guidelines. So we shouldn't be too far adrift. But Rob, do you have a comment?
I think during the phase where it's a shadow authority, I think the responsibility will remain by us until we're replaced by the authority that takes our place, vesting date, the full authority. I think when the shadow authority is in place, the shadow authority is preparing the new organisation, not necessarily dealing with the BAU of the for want of a better phrase, the residual organisation. I'm not sure that's best. I'm sure there'll be a significant number of large risks that are being dealt with and managed at that time. So I'm sure it'll be a fluid piece of work about risk management. But I think in terms of this organisation, it will remain with Ryan and the team. In terms of the future organisation, that'll be picked up by the shadow authority.
Okay. Any more questions? Right. So the recommendation is the Governance and Audit Committee approve the revised framework and agree to the next review being in 24 months' time. Yes, I would like a seconder for that proposal. Thank you, Mark. All in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Good. So we go to item 10, which is new contract procedure rules and scheme of delegation to officers. Councillor Paul Hewitt is not here to present this. So, Rob, are you presenting or Sarah is presenting? Thank you. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. The contract procurement rules are before you today as the Council is required to have a set of standing orders under the Local Government Act which deal with making of contracts for goods, services and works, and must ensure that they comply with legislation. These contract procedure rules are those standing orders and thus form part of the Constitution under Part 4. The Procurement Act 2023 became law on the 24th of February 2025, delivering a completely new set of procurement regulations. The aim of the Act is to create a simpler and more transparent procurement system which delivers the best value for money for contracting authorities whilst improving the way in which procurement is conducted. With this in mind, the contract procedure rules have been rewritten to align with the new Procurement Act and its terminology, thus removing the old legislative terminology, which at that time aligned with EU terminology. The rules have been aimed to make them easier to understand and more user-friendly. As this all involves a significant change to the old rules, we considered it appropriate to redraft a new set of rules rather than amend and track change the old rules. The key changes of the Act are summarised in Section 2 of the report. The contract procedure rules have been updated to reflect the changes from the new Procurement Act and to update any local changes within the Council. Alongside these changes, the scheme of delegations within the Constitution has also been updated to reflect the new rules and the new legislation, to reflect revised financial thresholds and current job titles, officer job titles. There are no new delegations as such. Section 3 of the report provides further details of the major changes made to the contract procedure rules. The recommendation is therefore that Governance and Audit approve the new contract procedure rules at Appendix A and make a recommendation to full Council that the Constitution be amended in accordance with Appendix A and so that the contract procedure rules are inserted after the financial management standards. And the second recommendation is to delegate to the monitoring officer to make any further necessary changes to the contract procedure rules if required to comply with subsequent guidance, policy and updated legislation. I will need obviously a proposer and a seconder to that in due course. The scheme of delegation is before you today as that forms part of the rules, but that is in fact a cabinet decision, but I thought it was prudent to include everything so that you can see everything and have everything before you today. There is one amendment I would just like to highlight that we will be making to the contract procedure rules, and that is on page 24 and page 17. In the document it says that the limit for a deed is £1 million. That is actually going to be changed to £500,000. I have with me today Tracy Mellor, who is the Contract and Procurement Manager. So happy to take any questions, and between us, hopefully we can answer them. Thank you.
On the question of that amendment, I think contracts under deed are valid for 12 years and under hand are 6 years. Is that
yes,
correct?
That's absolutely right. Yes.
So isn't that still quite a high threshold for short-term contracts?
We consider, I suppose, in light of what we actually do as a council and how many contracts we have, that actually that is an appropriate amount, and it's in accordance with other local authorities within the area. And we have also had these procedure rules sense checked by ILGA, and to be honest, they recommended a higher value, but we've gone with a value that we consider is probably more justified and reasonable.
And my second question is all procurement delegated to Cabinet, or are there occasions when full Council is the authorising body?
The granting of a contract and the award of a contract is an executive function,
right.
And therefore, in essence, yes, it sits with Cabinet, but there are occasions if it's a strategic budget. Yeah.
It's above the green budget.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If so, Sometimes it does go to council if it's a strategically important contract, and obviously we want to be open and transparent and have all members involved in considering it. And also, as Rob kindly pointed out, depending on the value and whether there is a budgetary provision under the financial procurement rules, anything over £100,000 has to go to council if there is not a budget provision, or you're moving money from one budget to another, or it involves grant funding. So, for example, I'm aware, and I believe like the Serco contract went to council to be considered. That's £250,000, involves 3 councils. There was a change in specification and introduction of a new service, which were trade waste. So it was prudent that that went before all members to be considered.
Thank you. Right, questions? Mark and then David.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I read this new government contract method is transparent, is it not? I mean, it's more transparent because in paragraph 2.2, everything that happens with a contract, initial search for a contractor to the closing of that contract, has to be published in notices. So where are those notices published? And if they're published in the central digital platform, which is mentioned in 2.4, how can we, as members of the public, get access to that to see what's actually going on?
Yeah, so you're quite right. The biggest change within the Procurement Act 2023 and the legislation that sits around it is transparency. So the central government want full oversight of all government spending, including at this level. So the notice requirements start from engaging with suppliers at pre-market engagement stage and being transparent about those conversations that are happening early on, right up until the fact that a contract is naturally expiring. We're telling the market that and it's to warm the market up for re-procurement activity. And to answer your question in respect of where you can see those notices, the central digital platform is a centralised government system. It's an enhanced version of the current platform we have, known as Find a Tender Service. So anybody can set up an account, log on to that. They can search under Breckland or any other contracting authority. They can search by category and they can see the level of notices that are there.
David.
The answer to this might be once you've produced the procurement handbook, which I notice is to follow. But just wondering how you're going to manage this, how in practice the social value element is managed, where there's a requirement to maximise social value, but equally to deliver the most advantageous offer. And obviously there's a dilemma there where you might get a cheaper tender, but there might be a more expensive one which offers, I don't know, apprenticeships or job creation or something like that. Just what the process is for managing that.
So the process for managing that is balancing the weightings in the tender, and the key words around social value are always relevance to the contract and proportionality. So for some contracts, social value is not going to be relevant and it's not going to be proportionate, and it's recognising the markets that you're procuring in as well. So when we're tendering for an opportunity at the moment for a leisure provision for Attleborough. So within that, we set aside 10% of the overall weighting towards that. But it's well balanced within so it's not the only influencing factor. You could still set your price at 50%, 60%, quality at 40%, and your social value at 10%. So it's really about how you balance the weightings within your procurement.
I guess that's made clear in the tender documents, the different weightings that you're attaching to those criteria.
Yes, the weightings are made very clear. So we would even discuss those weightings at the pre-procurement stage with suppliers to work out what's deliverable, what's achievable within the contract. And then at the first point we publish a notice, we have to tell the market how that's going to be split. So that transparency is there from start to finish, and it's woven throughout the procurement document, so it's unequivocally clear to bidders, suppliers who want to tender how their bid is going to be scored.
And is final sign-off on those weightings part of the procurement function, or is there further senior management oversight?
Not generally, Mr. Chairman. Generally, I work with the stakeholders. We try and understand what the critical factors in the contract are, and it will always be either a good quality provision, or it will be we've got a really strict budget and we need, to adhere to this. So I generally guide them to a position that's going to create that balance within the procurement.
Okay, thank you. Linda.
Could I just ask you to look at Appendix A and paragraph 21.6, which didn't seem to me to mean what I expected it to mean. Contracts will be awarded based on the most advantageous offer to the council. Matt, quite understand that. Then goes on to say where it is considered that lowest price for purchases is in the best interests of the council, advice should be sought from the contracts and procurement team. I wonder whether that should really be saying it's considered that if it's considered that lowest price for purchases is not in the best interest, you need to consult. So I wonder if you could just check the positive, negative nature of that.
So that narrative is to cover the officers who have an ability to award contracts without any procurement involvement and not using any qualitative assessment. So they are awarding a price, but a contract based purely on price alone.
So why do they need to refer elsewhere if it's on price? That was your point, wasn't it, Linda?
It sounded like everybody would have to, everything would have to be referred.
Yeah, so I think the point is that under the weightings, we can literally award a contract based purely on price. This is to make sure, by consultation with the contracts and procurement team, that is appropriate for what we're procuring.
Rob, are you happy that that's sufficiently clear?
Yes, I mean, I always like to go for the lowest price, but sometimes quality counts. And that's why Tracy's here to manage that. I think alongside the framework, there's a piece of work done around the culture of procurement within the organisation, as well as the major procurement that perhaps I'm involved in and working with Tracy and her team on things like Serco and Parkwood and things like that. There is a significant amount of small value in the low thousands, hundreds of pounds worth of procurement that is delegated and most officers can undertake that. I think it's important that they seek advice and counsel from Tracy's team to make sure we're following the rules. There's a significant piece of change in legislation. And for some contracts, lowest price won't necessarily be the contract you want to award. In a lot of cases it will be, but in some cases the quality or the social value or something else may be more important. And I think that's why they need to have the input of our expert professional team, essentially. So yes, I am supportive.
Okay. Any more questions? No. So we have, I think we've actually got a 3-level recommendation here. Item 1 is that we approve the contract procedure rules at Appendix A. I will propose that. Do I have a seconder? Mark, all in favour? 1, 2, against, abstain. I've got 2 members not voting. Right. Right, so that deals with the contract rules at Appendix A, and then we recommend to full council that the Constitution be amended in accordance with Appendix A, so that the contract procedure rules are inserted after the financial management standards and to delegate to the monitoring officer to make any further necessary changes to the contract procedure rules if required to comply with subsequent guidance, policy and updated legislation. Do I have a seconder for that recommendation? Linda, all in favour? Right, that's unanimous. And then the third block is recommend to Cabinet that to note the new contract procedure rules as approved by Governance and Audit, and to approve the proposed scheme of delegation for officers relating to contracts and procurement at Appendix B. Do I have a seconder? Mark, all in favour? Thank you. So all those recommendations are covered. Thank you very much. So we move on to the work programme. Item 11, which I think somewhere near the end here. Thank you for attending, by the way. So, by the way, Alison Chubbuck is at a Section 151 Officers Conference today, which is a once-a-year event, which I think it's a lonely job, so it's a good occasion that they meet up once a year. Hmm? Well,
I'm not sure they have the most exciting parties.
well,
I don't want to be disparate.
I
won't tell her you said that.
I think it was described as slightly more exciting than watching paint dry, but don't mean it that, please. Right. So forward work programme is 11th of December. We have strategic risk report, internal audit progress report, audit results, and the audited statement of accounts and treasury management media report, which I think will include a little bit. Yeah, I don't think it will be over in 37 minutes like this one is at the moment. Those are all essential items in the calendar. If I would be amenable to an extra meeting if we thought that was going to go over 2 hours, but I think we're fairly good at dealing with the business in hand. So is everyone happy with that immediate element of the forward programme? Is anyone in need of any training? No. Good. Right. So the next meeting is on Thursday, 11th of December at 10 a.m. here. And thank you. The meeting